Hey, good morning to all you car gals and guys out there. Welcome to another Cars and Coffee with me, Kenny Brown. Over the next hour or so, I'm going to share some really cool technical information, and this is going to be a really cool episode. I'll tell you what we're going to talk about in a little bit, but you might see a few things over my shoulder. So I need to go down my carrier list, as everybody knows. You're in the right place. I already said that, didn't I? Okay. Let's see. The tech talk today is going to be about intake manifolds, specifically for the 4.6 4-valves and the Daytona Prototype engine that we have to repair for Roy, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. Following up from last week, we had some questions on brake ducts, so I'm going to go through some brake duct stuff for you, and also I got something cool to show you what we did for a GT500, which is really difficult to get brake ducts in the front. So talk about that in a little bit. We'll touch on the Speed Therapy Academy, which, I mean, if you're getting value out of my Saturday morning things, if you've been in any of the workshops, I mean, I just barely grazed the surface. In the Academy, we take a deep dive, and I'll go into a little more detail on that in a little bit. We've got a few questions today, and of course, I will answer your questions live. So if you've got any questions, be sure to send them in. And also, something that really helps us out as far as spreading the word is watch parties. So you invite your friends. There's a way to do that, right?
Yeah, they just have to click watch party.
Yeah, click watch party and invite your friends. That'd be very cool. Of course, we always need those thumbs up. That helps us spread. We're simulcasting, as you know, on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, which is, from where we started, 7 weeks ago, where are we?
We're on 38.
Yeah, 38 weeks ago. I think we've come a long way. We're going to talk about the, Roy's Daytona Prototype engine, because people want to know what we're working on. So we're going to probably start a new segment on that. Just to let you know some of the neat things we're doing. Let's see. Oh, this month's art, I'm leaving it up there from before, because this is done by Nicholas Watt, one of my favorite artists. Remember Nicholas? And bright red car. So that's actually a GT40 Mark IV in 1967. And even signed by Dan Gurney and Phil Hill. Phil Hill didn't drive a GT40, but he's in the chaparral right behind. So I thought that was in the Christmas spirit. We got Nicholas in a red sleigh on the wall. So
I need to be politically correct and say holiday.
No, it's Christmas. Okay, let's see. Again, if you're just joining us now, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, and I will be sharing some of my extensive knowledge and experience from over 40 years of building great cars and professional motorsports. So, what should we start with first? I think we're going to start with brake ducts first, because I think, was it Wendy that asked about brake ducts last week?
I don't. It was somebody. I didn't catch your name.
Hey, so I want to know about brake ducts. So we're going to do just a little bit on brake ducts. Right here. Okay, why do we use brake ducts? It's really simple. It's to keep brakes cool. The brakes on your car, especially on track, they are heat generators. And what I talked about before is a Mustang, 3,800 pounds, hurtling down the straightaway at 120, 130 miles an hour. That is a bunch of kinetic energy in motion. So to stop that kinetic energy, object in motion says to stay in motion until acted upon an outside source. Well, stopping could be done by a guardrail, a concrete barrier, a tree, but those really aren't the preferred methods of slowing a car down. Brakes are. So the brakes take that kinetic energy and turn to heat energy. So that's why if you're on track, you have to cool the brake ducts, because they get really, really hot. I can tell you on my car, I'm seeing typically 1,200 degrees rotor temperature, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we have brake pads that match the temperature range of what the rotors are running at, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Because we have some of our customers with GT500s that are really, really fast, and running 1,600 degrees rotor temperature, which is really a lot. That's like a race car. But they've got pads that will go up to 2,000 degrees, so that kind of takes care of that. So let's go on to brake ducts. My brake ducts are pretty unique. And this design has been around for a very long time. But as you can see, the inlet is a 3-inch and oval. And that is done specifically. I'll prop up here. Okay, the reason that's done that, if we could lose the title down there. Okay, now I gotta move this way, this way, there.
Move the other way because, yeah.
Okay, here's the inside of the rotor. And the reason I go to the squished oval design is if you match that up to the rotor, you can see that 100% of the air goes into the eye of the rotor. That way?
Yep.
Here we go. 100% of the air, because it's squished, goes in the eye of the rotor. Now, I don't have an example, but there's a lot of like 4-inch ducts out there, and you think, well, 4-inch is bigger, it's going to be better. Well, the problem is if this is 3 like that, and it's squished, a 4-inch is going to come out, and it's actually going to go across the face of the rotor. So what happens is that as the air comes in, it's going to hit the face of the rotor, it's going to disrupt the airflow. It's going to cause some turbulence as it rolls over and into the center, number one. Secondly, you're going to get uneven brake pad wear because you're running different temperatures inside and outside. And we pretty much proved that we're doing the Mustang Challenge in 2010, I think. We did some testing with my car and the FR500S cars back to back. They had 4-inch brake ducts. I had my 3-inch right here, and the rotor, temperatures were similar except for the GT500 with a 4-inch had a different outside and inside temperature, which explained why we used brake pads at a different rate. So that's why we use the oval. And this is for S197. And speaking of brake temperatures, well, we talked about before. Brake rotor temperature paint. Thank you. Prop just happened to appear on my list, and this is what we use. It goes on like this orange color, but as it gets hot, it keeps changing colors, and it don't stop changing color at the maximum temperature. So that's how we know how to do our brake ducts, and it comes with this little card that. You can see the different colors that give you different temperatures. Like I say, mine typically around 1200 degrees. Pretty cool little paint thing. Some of our customers are up to 1600 degrees. Now this is to me, this is like the coolest thing ever, having just one color. But back when I started out in racing, we had as many as 5 different colors. And you have like 5 different paint stripes on there, and see whenever they kick off, then that's going to be your high temperature. This is so easy, just one color and it goes. So anyway, this is for the S197. This is actually the second design we came up with. This is the SN95. And actually, there's another piece to this. It's a 2-piece for the SN95s, and you can see it's oval. Oh, somebody asked on the question for a Fox body, if they're going to upgrade the brakes and brake ducts, what your spindle to use. If you got a Fox and you're converting, go to a 96 or newer SN95 spindle. The reason for that is the geometry, the steering geometry is better, and also brake ducts fit better. So if you're doing a conversion on a Fox, SN95, 96 and newer is the way to go. So that's SN95. An interesting thing, this is for the 550. The 550 with its bigger rotors, we didn't have to squish it. We can just use a straight 3-inch and it perfectly goes inside. So that's kind of like the brake ducts on the spindle side. Now, the other question, we had another question on where do you get, if you don't have a car that's already has the like ovals or, to pull in air to use for a brake duct, what do you do? Well, we have we call it universal brake ducting kit. Brake duct, brake ducting. And the reason we call it universal is there's so many different front fascia designs. I mean, we would go crazy trying to come up with specific inlets for every one of them, where just to keep it more cost effective, we go to what we call universal. And what that is it's a little duct, and it's a formed plastic. And what we do is have you locate a spot it's the closer you get to the center of the car, the higher the pressure, the more desirable it is. Off to the edge, the air is moving quicker around the side of the car, which means the pressure goes up, goes down, and isn't as effective. That's, we learn all this aerodynamic stuff in the academy. So anyway, we give this, and what you do is just trim it to fit wherever it is. And to make it even simpler, you trim it to fit, drill some holes, and we use zip ties to hold it in place. I mean, it couldn't be simpler than that. And of course, a 3-inch duct goes onto the back, and away you go. We ran into a situation with the GT500s with the track back. They've got so much radiator coolers in front, it's pretty much impossible to get air anywhere from the center of the car. What we've done, because a lot of people don't want to take their fog lights out, what we've done, we've got a GT500 in the shop that we're updating, and is going to get the new rear suspension, which is information coming in weeks. And what we found, we're going through the car doing a nut and bolt check and gone through everything. I mean, I could just tell straight away the front rotors were really, really hot just by the color. And I looked at the brake pads, and they were like super hot too. So we started looking a little deeper, and what happened, there was these little like 3-inch holes in the lower radiator cover, and the brake ducts had actually come off. So it was getting very, very little air to the brake ducts. So we came up with a really cool design. It's the first time we've done this, and it's pretty cool. Let me kind of show you what we did. Okay, here we are, Cars and Coffee Live. This is a Naca Duck. For those, I mean, a lot of people have seen Naca Ducks, and this is kind of the best picture I could find to give the best description. But essentially what it is, it's a flat duct. It's narrow in the front, and it widens. As it widens out at the back and goes deeper, it actually draws air down, as opposed to a scoop on the top. This actually is more efficient. It draws air down. It doesn't increase drag at all. And Naca Duck was developed back, I'm going to say, 70 years ago. And Naca stands for National and Aerodynamics Committee or something like that.
Obviously, you didn't study it before.
Well, I wrote it down, but it's on my desk. Anyway, that was the precursor to NASA. So this is where the Naca Ducts come from, and they're used heavily in airplanes and used heavily in race cars for getting air in without disrupting airflow and without creating drag. So what we did, we took this concept, and this is the very outside edge, and you can see this radiator right there, and it's really hard to get a duct in there. So we used this Naca duct off to the side, and Kirk got really clever, and he made it look just like the diamond shape of the lower radiator. But this way, we're pulling air in, and because of that, we got an absolutely straight line back to the brake ducts. And that's going to give a lot better airflow. The brakes are going to run cooler, and the pads will last longer. The rotors will last longer. Now we use this type of I got a piece back here. We use silicone hose, and the reason I do this is like temperature 600 degrees. So I mean it's really good. But the other thing, this is about as good as it gets. This is actually aircraft hose. This is what they use in airplanes. And if it's good enough for airplanes, it's good enough for our cars. I know there's a lot of other brake ducting materials out there, but this is the one we used to offer, the neoprene. But it just only costs a little bit more, and it's just so much better.
600 degree temperature.
Yeah, it's got 600 degree temperature in the silicone, and that's what's in all of our kits. They get in the brake ducting, you get the ducts, some zip ties to hold this in place, some longer zip ties to zip it around the frame rail, and then of course the 3-inch hose clamps to put it all on. So that's kind of our little thing on brake ducts. I'll see if I had any other questions on brake ducts. Fox body. Oh yeah, there's another question about, and if you don't have a car that already has ducts in the front, what do you do? Well, universal. I mean, that's as easy as it gets. Just remember, the closer you get to the center of the car, the higher the pressure. Typically, what I look for is like you've got your lower radiator opening. Typically I'm right at the outside edge of that, which is just not that far off the center, which means you're still at a high pressure point. And high pressure is what you want. You want to get that air into the center of the eye of the rotor, so that because the rotor's cooled from the center out. That's what the vanes are for. And I also should mention, two-piece slotted rotors. I mean, that's all we ever use. Never ever use drilled rotors. The reason is they're going to crack at the drill holes. Absolutely 100% unconditionally guarantee they will crack at the holes. Also, if you got a lot of holes around there, you're missing surface area. But what the grooves do is they actually serve two functions. One, they clear brake dust out, and secondly, they release gases. Now, as a brake duct and as a brake on the rotor, as it's on there, it'll build up gas pressure at the trailing edge of the rotor. And as it does, I mean, you don't get as much braking. Back in the Celine program, we couldn't use slotted rotors. So the brake pads, actually, when they came off for a change, we never looked at the back, always had to look at the front, because the back of the pads were always, almost new, and the fronts were gone. They came out as a pure wedge. That's because of all the gas buildup in the back. Another thing is you always want to have these pointing forward, so it goes like that. And you can actually double check on that. If you see the vanes, you can see the vanes have a flow to them. So you always want to make sure these are going forward. A couple of times we had cars come in for us to do work on, and the rotors were on backwards, and they were one customer kept going through brakes and rotors, and the guys working on his car kept putting the rotors on backwards, so they weren't cooling. They were pulling hot air in, so they weren't cooling at all. So it's really important to keep them facing forward. So that's a little thing on brake ducts. I'm sure we'll get some questions in on that in a little bit. But this car is in coffee, so I think I'm going to take a second to have some coffee. Hey, good morning, Joe. I see you're out there. Joe is a graduate of our Speech Therapy Academy inaugural class. He's actually been he's almost part of the family. He's been with the program for all the way back to we upgraded the suspension on his 2000 Cobra R. Did the full Kenny Brown AGS 3.5, which is the IRS front suspension and the rear IRS complete with the geometry improvement. And he loved that car. He sold it. He said he always wished he had it back. So let's see, moving right along. Okay, before I jump into intake manifolds.
If you're just joining us.
What?
If you're just joining us.
Oh, okay, here we go again. If you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, where I'm sharing just tons of technical information along with my experience in building great cars and professional motorsports. In fact, I've won 7 national championships in pro racing with Mustangs. So, I mean, I've kind of been there, seen it, done it, been there. And that's kind of like where I learned. I mean, I learned everything on my own. So, in fact, my little toolbox back here, and people have been with us for a while. I like my toolbox. That's been with me for over 40 years. And the top box, I call my go box. Everything I need on the top box, so we can lift it off and go if we're going to go testing or something. So the top box is the most important as a go box. Been to just every major racetrack in North America. Okay, I'm going to talk about I mentioned Joe. Oh, Cliff's out there. Hey, Cliff. Speaking of Cliff, he's got FR500S, which is really cool because it's one of the 3 FR500S Speedworks cars that I engineered for the Mustang Challenge in 2009 and 2010. And we're going through and we are updating it to the 2011 World Challenge GTS specifications or they allowed my full suspension, except he's getting more than he's getting new rear suspension, cool rear suspension. But we're doing a top side on the motor to increase power, and that's our subject for next week. We're going to talk about increasing power on the 463 valves. There's some pieces out there that make it pretty simple, and what we'll talk about is power comes from the top end. The bottom end, you can lose power at the bottom, but all the power comes from the intake heads, cams, exhaust, all that. So that's going to be next week's show and tell, as well as Tech Talk. So I kind of got off on a little bit. The Academy. Cliff is another graduate of the inaugural class of the Academy. Okay, what is the Speed Therapy Academy? It is.
Why don't you go into other stuff first? Okay, never mind. Go on.
There's always a critic. I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to talk about it more at the end too.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about it twice.
Okay, good. Okay.
Because to me, it's really important. It's something if you really want to learn and get a whole bunch of knowledge and information, I highly recommend the Speed Therapy Academy, because like I say, we take a much deeper dive on all the subjects that we talk about on Saturday mornings and even more. It's what's it consist of? Well, first of all, it used to be a 12-week course. It ended up being a 14-week course for the first one. And we have really jammed some stuff in, which was kind of tough for everybody. So we're spreading it out to 16 weeks this time. Yeah, because what you learn in Saturday mornings, you learn the what. In the Speed Therapy Academy, you learn the how, which is, what and how are two different things. It's interesting because my parts are probably the most copied in the Mustang world. And everybody copies them, but they don't know why. I could give you examples, but anyway, you're going to learn the why. It's 16 weeks. We have a virtual class format, which is not like this. It's Zoom. So we got like the Brady Bunch. Everybody's in there. Everybody's participating. They speak. We talk back and forth. In fact, actually, the very first step to the academy, joining the academy, is you spend about a half hour on Zoom with me, so I can learn more about you, your car, and what you're looking for, because all that information helps me kind of craft what we're going to talk about. You also get this nifty shirt, Speed Therapy Academy shirt. I forgot the notebook. You get a Speed Therapy Academy notebook. My handy assistant and producer is going to run off and get the notebook. And at the end, you get a certificate of completion, which is pretty cool. We had, one of our guys runs a shop, and he wanted to learn more about all this stuff so he could do a better job with his customers. But he wanted that. He wanted that plaque right up on his wall. I don't think my assistant's finding my notebook. It's on the shelf.
Just keep going.
Anyway, I'll keep going. Anyway, the reason there's a notebook is it got a bunch of dividers in it, because each week we call immersion class is we have a PowerPoint, and there it is. Got a Speed Therapy Academy notebook, and there's lots of stuff in there. And the reason there's dividers is that every week there's like a PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint is then downloaded to the resource section of the Academy. And the Speed Therapy Academy has their own private group for the resource section, and that's available there to download. So people can download it, punch holes in it, stick it in the notebook, so they have that information to go on. Every session, there's a download available except for geometry. That's kind of like I talk about things that I don't want other people to really know. Just the people that are in the academy. We talk about it, but the information is not available for download. Too many secrets in there to make it too available. Then we've got master classes where we have people come in. We had Doug come in, talk about driving. Industry experts that I have come in, spend like 20 minutes, half hour talking about their area of expertise, and then we open up, all our guys can ask some questions, which was very popular. We had Doug on driving. He's actually the #2 instructor at the Porsche Driving Academy. We had Steve Shard talking about wheels. He's from Ford Line. We had, Ben from Impact talking about safety and harnesses.
Hardware.
We had,
Gary from hardware.
do we have hardware?
Yeah. Hardware and plumbing.
Oh, I had hardware and plumbing. And then we finished off with Buddy Fay, who's an engineer I've known for years, that he's actually won multiple Trans Am championships, and he's engineered just about every kind of sports car in racing, including prototypes. And we're going to talk about prototypes here in a little bit too. Anyway, he wrote a book a long time back called Data Power. He actually wrote the book on data. So he did kind of like a brief thing on like data acquisition 101, which is how we finished out the academy. And that was appropriate because the last couple of weeks is all about putting it all together, driving, tuning your car, learning how to drive better.
This is perfect session. It's January one.
Yeah, Carrie, this is perfect. It's January one because it's wintertime, at least for us Northerners, and we can't go racing, so might as well learn about it. So when the spring comes, you're ready to go. And I tell my guys what I want them to be is when they go to if they're track guys, when they go to the track, I want them to be the guys. I tell people probably the two worst places to get information about your car is the internet and the paddock. And the third is the guy that lives down the street that thinks he knows everything. But yeah, I turned these people into the guys. They know what they're doing. They show up, they look sharp, they're out on top of it, and their cars are going to be good and they're going to drive good.
And they know how to tune it.
Yeah, and they're going to know how to make adjustments and tune the car at the track to keep making it better and better. So that's kind of like what the whole goal is. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we actually had people send in videos of their car, driving, and we critiqued it. And I talked about things that would make them work, at least what I would do. Now, I tell people that if you do driving events and you get instructors, listen to everybody, try what they tell you, but in the end, you need to make a decision on what it is that works for you the best. Like one instructor might tell you something that works for you in a certain situation. Another instructor, certain niches, but you got to make your own way and figure it out in yourself, whatever works best for you. So anyway, I always gave them some clues on how I would change driving and things that I would do, and it turned out pretty cool. In fact, Joe, he can't wait to get back to the track that we had the video from, because he's going to change his driving completely and he's going to be a lot faster. Notebook, I've gone through certificate of completion.
You can sign up on the website.
Oh, you can sign up on the website.
Or call in.
Yeah, and at the end, I'll go through the Carrie printed off a syllabus. That's a word I haven't heard in a long time. About what we cover. And we had a couple of people who don't have Mustangs and think that, I don't know, what can I get out of it? Well, here's the thing. We use Mustangs as a sample car. And simply because, most of our customers and people are Mustang people, but not everybody. But in the same token, all cars have wheels, tires, shocks, suspension, everything. So the theory that we talk, mostly theory, it's about the performance, platform, chassis, dynamics. I got it out. So, the things that we talk about are applicable to any car, no matter what. We just use the Mustang as a model because it's kind of easy for me. I got tons of parts and lots of experience. So we'll go over the syllabus later. Now, getting into the cool stuff, which is over my left shoulder. And let me give you a little pre-run. What we're going to talk about is intake manifolds for a Daytona Prototype engine. Roy, one of our customers, racing AIX-99 Cobra. Of course, he's got our full suspension, Pro 4R brakes, and came around race brakes. It's a really nice car and big, huge tires. And he went into AIX because he had our early modification to the IRS, which we had to notch the chassis, and NASA won't allow that. A long time ago, some friends of mine built a car that was so fast that nobody could catch it with that IRS. So seeing as at that time, most of NASA was West Coast, and nobody out there had an answer. So they just banned it for AI, American Iron, and Putin moved to AIX. So anyway, the first year he just ran his regular motor, and he wanted some big power, did not want to turbocharge, did not want to supercharge. So to me, that meant the best 4.6 derived engine was the Daytona Prototype engines, and actually got the last one that was in the back of the warehouse from, I know the engine manager at Roush Yates, and I got the very last Daytona Prototype engine, and we're gonna talk about that. That's pretty cool. It's dry sump, and we had to do some modifications to get it into his car, but it's a really cool thing, and the only reason we have it apart right now is second to last race, first corner, okay? Idiot, I call it the first corner, idiot's corner.
He's running for championship.
Yeah, he's running for the championship. So first corner, idiot corner. Somebody ran into somebody, and that somebody ran into Roy and spun him around. Before he could get the clutch in, the engine went backwards. So the end result was, I mean, it was significant but not catastrophic. The secondary chain for the cams snapped, and he bent all the valves on the passenger side. So we've got that back in, and we're going through it. And I thought that's just a perfect opportunity to talk about intake manifolds and how you can make power with them. So I think, oh yeah, when you go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, Naca Ducks. Oh, there I am again. Okay, this is Roy's car. This is like the first year he's run, just a 4.6, and he did pretty well. But I might point out that Roy didn't get to complete the last two races, but he still finished second in the championship. So that was pretty cool. You know, big thumbs up to Roy. So that's his car. Now it looks a little bit different. We got wider fender flares on it, a lot bigger tires, like 315s in the front, and a nice little wing on the back. And so when I talk about Daytona Prototypes, in case people don't know, these are the Daytona Prototypes. And I think it's Daytona Prototypes started about 2003. Grand Am, which is a NASCAR derivative, and 24 Hours of Daytona, switched over to you have to drive a Daytona Prototype to be in 24 Hours of Daytona. So a lot of manufacturers built their engines and also the prototype. Ford started out with a version of the FR500 engine I had some prototype pieces from, and they had both 4.6 and 5.0, and that turned into the original Daytona Prototype engine, and then developed into even a better engine by later in the season. And this is what the later version of the Roush Yates Daytona Prototype engine looked installed in the car. And this is the manifold we're going to talk about, and you can see how high it is compared to the engine. Okay, this is what the Daytona Prototype engine looks in pieces. There's a lot of really cool parts. Now, the crankshaft was pretty surprising. It was kind of lightened up. It was polished and lightened up, taking weight out, rotating mass, so make things rotate faster and quicker. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'd never seen some of the things. And then on the bottom end, this is not a 4.6 block. This is the 5-liter racing block, and you can see there's a lot of extra ribs in there, which you can't see. There are tons of extra material, and it's side bolts and mains. It also have all these extra bosses out here to bolt stuff on, like dry sumps and things like that. So I mean, I've never seen one of those blocks before. That was pretty cool to see that. And here's something I was talking about, the crankshaft. If you look, they're missing a whole bunch of counterweight here. They trimmed the counterweights down and polished it, and there's some other places on the crankshaft that they lightened up and polished, which just to make it rev faster. And of course, here's the intake ports. Pretty sweet. So you can move a lot of air through that. The exhaust ports, move a lot of air out. And the camshafts. You note they're not pointing around like an egg, which means they got a lot of duration, which makes them very lumpy and makes a lot of power at the top end. And we'll talk about top end power here in a little bit. And this is kind of what it all looked like when it went back together before the cam covers and the top went on the intake manifold. And this is actually my FR500 intake manifold. It's magnesium. It was one of the prototypes. And it was actually designed for the street. And what you can see here, these little holes, okay, those little holes were actually butterfly valves. And the way it was designed, it's got a short runner, long runner, because it's sort of a semi-street application. So at low RPMs, the butterflies are shut. And what happens is the air gets sucked in around the bottom. And we're going to show you some long runners down here. The longer the runner, the more torque. The shorter the runner, the more high RPM power. So they had it so at lower RPMs, the butterflies were shut. They used the long runners for torque, and at high RPMs, the butterflies open, and they used the short runners. Well, we're only running like high RPMs. We actually eliminated the butterflies, and there's two pieces. The bottom part of the manifold, we just blocked it off, which is the same thing they did for the early Daytona Prototype engines. They just blocked off the bottom around the short runners. So anyway, that's kind of what it looks like. I think that's it. And we'll get to showing you some cool parts. I clicked all the buttons correctly, so I'm proud of myself. So, what I talked about, and I'll show you. Now this, we just did, let's see, let me go. Okay. It doesn't sit square, but you can see that, hello, you can see that it's the kind of echoes on this side. I don't know if you hear that or not, but you can see, man, that's a straight shot into the head and around the valve. Now, there's right in here is where the long runner would dump in. I don't know if you can see that or not. Would dump in. Well, long runners were gone. And you can actually see the long runners on the bottom. Long runners for torque, and we just blocked that off. So all we're using is the short runners. And yeah, this is magnesium. We just cleaned it up. This is magnesium, so we have to treat it again because magnesium wants to corrode really, really quickly. So we just gave it a quick cleanup, and we're going to retreat this before it goes back on the car. But I mean, that is, you got to admit, man, that is a pretty cool intake manifold, and it's really good for high RPMs. And this intake manifold, the runners are about 5.5 inches up. Here's the top part. Just fell on my foot. And the top part is pretty much like a standard Cobra. We used 62 millimeter throttle body. We didn't go crazy on throttle body. It's something you have to be careful of if you're looking for performance in your car. A lot of people just, put a huge throttle body on there, and it might not. No, hair's getting fluffy again. It's the weather. It's raining like crazy. It's a bad hair day. Put a big throttle body on, and in reality, I mean, just doing a throttle body. Well, my hair is crazy today. Just doing a throttle body may not give you that much more power. Sometimes if you go too big on a throttle body, what happens is you crack that, a lot more air comes in than the intake manifold can handle, and it actually does not help your power that much. A throttle body has to be part of a system. And I talk about on suspensions and chassis, everything I do is a system, rear suspension system, a front suspension system. But making power is also a system. And that's going to be next week's topic about making power. But the point is that just putting a big throttle body on may not give you, what you're looking for. My suggestion, what we do instead of throttle bodies is you do like headers, intake manifold, and a tune. And, the throttle body that comes from the factory is engineered for the flow that the intake manifold can handle. So, I mean, just a word of warning, I mean, these big throttle bodies look like they're going to make huge power. It's very, very little. It's surprisingly little if you don't do anything else. So anyway, that's the whole throttle body story. Now, what happened is we want to put the Daytona Prototype engine in. This is the intake manifold, as you saw in the pictures, the Roush Yates intake manifold. Now, this is like the last series, the last generation. And I'm lost back here. Hold on, here I am. And it's plastic on the bottom and carbon fiber on top. I didn't take it apart because there's a gazillion bolts and it's a real pain. But you can see from the back that the runners underneath this webbing, the runners kind of crisscross, and they go right down. They go right into the center. Unlike on the FR500, but down the side, he's actually going into the center. And these runners are the FR500 intake. The runner is about 5.5 inches, and on this about 8.5 inches. And my guess is that the prototype engines are endurance engines, and they don't want to wring the snot out of them because the harder this old saying, a dog that craps fast doesn't crap long. So I'm sure what they did, they wanted to dial it back and run in the lower RPM range for endurance. So that's why the runner's like 8.5 inches. Anyway, that's a bunch taller than the standard manifold, and it was difficult. It was going to be difficult. I had to make some modifications to get the hood down. Plus, we had to do a whole bunch of ducting and create a whole new air system. And the engine was expensive enough at that point, so we chose to use my FR500 intake manifold because it would sit down low. Well, we set it on the motor, and guess what? It didn't match up. The ports were so much bigger and in a different spot that the intake manifold didn't match up. The other thing is the headers, the bolt pattern on the headers didn't match up with Daytona Prototype heads. So we actually had to fill the old holes and drill and tap and helicoil new holes for headers. So that was all ready to go. We set my intake manifold on it, and it was like, oh man, what a disappointment. So what I ended up doing is ended up using my FR500 heads, which are like an early version of that. And that's with the motor, that 570 horsepower naturally aspirated, which isn't too bad. But we're at some point we'll probably go the full boat because we have to put the upper end, the DP engine on. We'd have to do a standalone fuel system and a standalone ECU. So that's why we kind of stuck with the FR500 stuff on the top end, and then also we're able to use the factory processor, which saves a lot of money. So that's kind of how we ended up with that, and it's an amazing motor. Even though it's quote 4.6 production based, it's so different than a standard 4.6 engine. Obviously, you saw the block, you saw the crank, the heads flow a whole bunch more air. It's got a really cool intake manifold. So that's kind of like the thing with intake manifold: long runners torque, short runners power at the top end, which is a long runner's low end torque and power at the top end for a short runner. And that's why you see, like on a lot of high RPM cars, you got little short stacks. And anyway, that's kind of like the Terry's coming up to say something.
I'm just getting ready. Get myself ready.
You just put the cap on something I was going to take a drink out of.
Oh, I can't read your mind.
Okay. So I think I've gotten through all the important stuff.
Do you have any more questions that you had?
Any more? Let me go back to my question sheet. See, we talked about the Fox. We talked about.
While he's looking for the questions, if you like what Kenny's sharing with you, give us some thumbs up. That helps the Facebook algorithm spread the Cars and Coffee. So again, if you like it, give us some thumbs up or some hearts.
And send some love, the little heart-shaped wrenches. Well, here's one that I missed. If you're rebuilding a 4.6 or a 5-liter, do I recommend billet oil pump gear for road racing? If you're redoing an engine, I recommend the billet oil pump for any engine. Street, track, race, doesn't matter. It's a much more durable piece of kit. You really want to have that. And if they Daytona Prototype, we don't have an oil pump in the engine because it's dry sump. And dry sump means there's a staged pump that hangs off the side of the motor, it's driven by a cog belt, and there's 3 scavenges. So there's 3 pumps that scavenge. Oil pan is only about that thin. And it scavenges all the oil out of the sump, so there's no oil laying in the sump. And it pumps it back to the oil tank. The oil tank, then there's a dash 16 line to the back, dash 12 forward, and we'd learn about all that stuff in the academy. Dash 12 is power, pressure, so it goes in the front of the pump, which is pressure, then it goes to the oil filter, oil cooler, and into the engine. So I mean, you never slosh and run out of oil pressure with a dry sump system, which makes it's why all race cars run dry sumps. So, but yeah, if you're doing them, and if your engine's apart, even if you're doing like cams, where you have to pull the front cover off and do chains, put the oil pump in. Absolutely. And another question is what exhaust are you using on Roy's car? Well, it's kind of like there's not a lot of good choices for me for headers for the Cobras. So many of them are designed like drag race guys are designed. They come down like hang below everything. So what we use, because it packages so just darn well, is we use the Dasani mid-light headers. But package really well. It's easy to hook up an exhaust to, and they make just about as good a power as long tube headers. So I mean, that's any of the 464 valves that we do. We always use the mid-light header because it just, if anybody's put a number of headers on, know how much of a pain in the rumpus it can be. Because even though they're supposed to fit, none of them ever do. Well, we go to the mid-length, and it's kind of like a slam dunk. So that's the exhaust system we use. Okay, we'll go through. I'll go through the academy syllabus, and then we'll go to have any questions coming in.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions.
I have a couple of questions we'll get to. Calvin's there. Calvin used to work for us a long time ago. Okay, the academy syllabus. Kara wrote, I think, see that she wrote on top of that. I was going to say it's something I haven't heard of in a long time. Anyway, this is kind of what we go through in beginning week one is kind of get acquainted. We have everybody on screen. We do the whole Brady Bunch thing in Zoom. And then we start talking about the performance platform. And then I go into chassis. We talk about a lot of things on chassis, not just Mustangs, but race car chassis, monocoque chassis, a lot of chassis information. Then we get into like suspension geometry, which is like the secret stuff. And then there's another week is suspension geometry advanced, which is even more secret stuff. We go into shocks and springs theory, how they work. Brake tech, put a whole evening into brake tech. All things brakes, which obviously are applicable for any cars. Wheels and tires. We go through wheels and tires, and what you have to look for in wheels. Reading the marking, street versus track versus race. Then tire temperatures and pressures, which is super important. That's how you tune a car at the track. We go into hardware and plumbing, radiators, cooling, engine trans, differential, and then engine driveline, improving performance, intake, internals, race pans, hydraulic bearings, release bearings, transmission, drive shafts. Then aerodynamics. This was a really popular. Aerodynamics part 1 and part 2, where I show some pretty cool pictures and explain how air works around a car. And it doesn't matter what kind of car it is. I mean, air acts the same. And that was kind of like one of the favorite classes. Then we go through safety, a whole bunch of stuff on safety. Let's see, and then vehicle preparation, whether it's for the street, the track, or race. Go through a whole vehicle preparation. Spend a whole night on vehicle preparation. Then track tuning, part 1 and part 2. That was another really popular thing. In fact, a long time ago on Cars and Coffee, I showed this little booklet or pamphlet that I've been carrying with me since the 70s on tuning at the track. If the car understeers, oversteers, what to look at, what to change. And I said in Cars and Coffee that we were going to post that, and then I changed my mind. And the reason is because that was mostly for open wheel cars like Formula Fords, Formula Atlantics, the cars I was working on back in the 70s. And to make it applicable for like a production car, I actually went through and made some changes, and I really need to talk about the differences. So that's why I didn't put it out for people just to look at, because I think it would be confusing.
Well,
and
and that's
make
what
mistakes.
started the academy, because
Yeah,
you wanted
that's what started the academy, because
you to
I
build up on
wanted to like go through that and explain. So that was like 2 nights. And then we get into driver coaching and reviews. Or like I say, where people send in, I talk about my driving, how I drive, the techniques I use. And then we had a number of people send in videos of their cars, which is really, really good. Because that way it was kind of cool, because with a video, we could go through and I could stop and we could talk about all the things we learned about in the beginning. It's kind of, I put track tuning at the end, because to get there, we've got to learn all the basics, how things work, why things work. And that's kind of what rounds it up at the end. And then, during the middle, at one time we had a mid-semester break, because I was trying to cram so much in. We did like 3 weeks in a row, 3 nights in a row. And it was like, that was a lot. So we took a mid-semester break. And then one night, just to kind of break it up a little bit, we did bench racing, where everybody, the Brady Bunch, and everybody had their favorite adult or other beverage. And, we just bench raced for the night, which was kind of cool. So, I mean, if you're on the fence and you want to learn stuff, you're not going to learn this anywhere else. You're not going to learn on the internet. You're not going to learn from anybody down the street. You're not going to learn it from the guy next to you in the paddock. This is the real stuff. This is based off of real experience. Like I say, 7 national championships in professional racing with Mustangs, SEC pro racing, actually. Sometime I need to bring in my all my hard cards. We need to find those hard cards, or thing you hang around your neck in pro racing that get you into the track. I've got a small collection of hard cards we'll bring in to show you sometime. So anyway, that's the academy. So with that, Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
It's well worth it. The session's starting in January, so you need to make sure you get registered ahead of time, because we need to sign you up for your 30-minute Zoom call with Kenny. Get your shirt size ordered and your notebook to you. So make sure you sign up. If you're on the fence, give me a call, or anybody. Yeah,
give Carrie a call. I mean, me. But, Carrie is the one that she put this whole thing together. She's the mastermind behind it, and she's the excellent resource to talk to if you want to know more information.
And what I typically do is I'll talk to people, and we'll talk about where they are, where they want to be, and if they're having any difficulties doing it, if they're a time crunch or a financial crunch, and then we work through that. We determine if it's this time or another time. We're not pushing into it. We just want to try to help you make a decision one way or the other. So it's pretty cool. Okay, just somewhere in there, so people talking about some superchargers. I think what we'll do, I'll do a Saturday on forced induction. My thoughts on forced induction, supercharging, turbocharging, all that. We'll just talk a little tech on that. That'd be kind of cool. Brad, write that down. Yeah, write that down. Okay, so this is the time to ask your questions. If you have any questions for Kenny, and I will shoot the first question out since I changed that logo. Okay, here he goes. From Alex Marin. Alex Marin is a longtime customer of ours, and I think he lives in Canada. Alex, you need to comment if you're in Canada. I think that's right across the border, I think. Okay, so his question is, can Kenny talk about vented hoods? And we have a lot of conversation on hoods and carbon and fiberglass. So just to let you know, but can I ask the rest of, I'll read you the rest of his question first. Okay. Like Ruby's Tiger hood for road track 2010, he has a 2010 S197 and it uses for road and track. I read fiberglass is better than carbon fiber. I also read about temperature cycling for the fiberglass prior to painting. Is this done at the plant when manufactured, or should it be done after purchase? Okay, some of that I just don't know the answer to. The last part of all the heat treating, I don't know the answer, but I'll give you a real quick my opinion. First of all, any car that goes on track needs a vented hood for 2 very specific reasons. The first is cooling. As you're going down, you straight away, you got all this air. I mean, you got a lot of air coming into the radiator. It goes through the radiator into the engine compartment. Once it's there, where does it go? The only place for it to go is down and back.
And what happens is you get all that air coming in, and you actually increase the pressure under the front of the car. And then also all the way back from the car. As soon as you put a vented hood in, the hot air then escapes through the top, which means if you're getting, first of all, you're extracting heat, which is really important to keep the heat down in the motor. But also, you're not letting that pressure build up under the front of the car, which means with air going out the top, and the pressure gets somewhat negative underneath, and that adds a huge amount of front grip. When Paul came out with the Tiger hood, Ford Racing was testing their prototype Boss 302S, I think in Groton up in Michigan, and Paul brought one of his hoods, and they put just hood on, nothing else, and I can't remember the amount of time the lap time increased was significant. It's like 1 or 2 seconds. It was a big increase. That's why all the Boss 300S cars had the Tiger hood, and also the G-Stream wing, which Paul had a big hand in developing. And the G-Stream wings, if anybody's interested, I mean, that is probably the best club racing wing, even pro racing wing that's available. They were in production, after Paul passed. They kept the wing thing going, and then about a year ago, the guy that was left with it just didn't want to do it anymore. So it kind of like went out. It was just like no G-Stream wings. Well, we've been in conversation. Somebody else is taking it over. G-Stream wings are going to be available. I strongly urge, if you're interested in one, call, get on the list, because they're going to be available again.
Maybe we'll have a G-String wing guy on for a guest. Just comment below if you'd like to have the expert on G-String wings.
Well, the expert on G-String
we
wing
can get him on.
Is the NASA engineer that helped develop it.
Yeah, we can get him on.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I've got connections.
Okay, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. So anyway, just comment if you'd like to hear from them. Also, here's our next. Are you finished?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I talked about, one more thing. Fiberglass versus carbon. Fiberglass is typically, well, it depends on how thick it is. It can be stronger. I don't know about the heat cycling thing. I'm not a fiberglass guy, so I can't answer that question for you. But anytime you have a carbon hood, you always want to put some heat reflective material underneath it, just to kind of protect the carbon itself. Now, carbon is actually done in a vacuum bag in a autoclave, so it sees a lot of heat to cure. But I always recommend putting like heat shielding underneath. And you get it like this aluminum foil type looking stuff that has a thickness to it, just kind of glue on there. So I always recommend that. And fiberglass is typically lighter than factory hoods, and carbon is lighter than fiberglass. If carbon price point's a little too rich for you, by all means, at least get a fiberglass hood. And I also recommend putting heat shielding on the hood on that too. Just because. So absolutely. I mean, every track car needs a vented hood. Hot air out, high pressure out, front end grip.
Okay, so we still have some aero and latch questions, i.e. aero catch. So anyway, James Jonas asks, I heard about the carbon having some cracking issues around the hood pins. And a lot of other people is wondering if fiberglass holds up better, or if you've seen that.
I would say probably. Although I can also say we have never had an issue. We use the aero catch. We don't use like the pin thing. We use aero catch, which are smooth and help aerodynamic performance. It's on the very end, Carrie, towards me, this side. No, where you were. Turn around, somewhere on the end. We use the aero catch, which is a lot of race cars use it. Most race cars use it. I mean, you don't really see hood pins anymore. Just hand me the box. Okay, that's kind of what the aero catch looks like. And as you can see, it's smooth. There's a little button here. You push that button and it pops up. And as it pops up, then you can lift the hood up. Anytime you put a fiberglass or carbon hood on, absolutely, positively adds some sort of additional hood restraints, whether it be hood pins or like an arrow catch. I mean, that's really, really important because they're so light. And what happens is there's a lot of air moving across the very front of the car. And as we talked about in the aero section, that means low pressure air, which means that technically the hood wants to lift up. And a lot of people have like carbon hoods, and they're inexpensive hoods, and they can see it like flopping going down the straightaway. That's because air coming across is low pressure air and just wants to suck the hood up, which is always why if you have vents on your hood, you always want them right behind the radiator, from the radiator back. You don't want them up by the windshield because the base of the windshield is a high pressure point. I've seen a number of cowl hoods advertised as heat extracting, and that's as wrong as it can be. A cowl hood that opens at the very back actually brings air into the engine compartment because there's high pressure air at the base of the windshield, and we actually show that with some really cool graphics. So another thing, that's where like NASCAR and a lot of other track cars have an air intake for the carburetor is at the base of the windshield because that's where high pressure is. So they take the air. You look under the hood and the air intake thing goes backwards. Okay, next.
Okay, so some more hood questions, and I'm skipping to the end because that's where the hood questions are going on and wing questions. I'll go back to the other questions. If you think I've skipped your question, I'll try to catch it after we finish the hood conversation. Okay, Alex, by the way, we do sell the arrow catch. Obviously, Kenny had it in his hand. And we also sell the hoods, chicane hoods, and the G-string wings. Yeah,
Tiger's hoods aren't there anymore, but our good friends at Chicane have picked up the ball and are running with it. So again, that was off market for a while. Now it's back. So all the cool stuff that Paul have developed is kind of like back in the market, which is great because that's stuff really works.
Okay, and so here's another question on the hoods. Wendy asks, I can verify the small vents on mine helped with, I think they're talking about hood flutter. People are experiencing hood flutter at 130 miles an hour. Do you have any comments on that? Yeah,
that's like I said, that's air's coming across, and if you join the academy, we'll talk a lot about aero and how it works in the car. But you're creating a low pressure air across the hood, except for the base. So you get low pressure at the front, high pressure at the back, and in the middle, it doesn't know what to do. I mean, it wants to suck the hood up, and if you don't have good reinforcement in the hood, it's going to flutter. I mean, if you've got a good hood, it's not a real problem, but that's what causes it. It's air pressure, or the lack thereof.
And Wendy would like to learn more on how to tune the wing.
Okay, I mean, I'll give you some general information because every wing is different. Every wing starts working at a different point. Like the G-string wings start creating downforce at about 40 miles an hour. And as far as the angle of attack, what I mean is you put a straight edge from the trailing edge to the leading edge, and whatever that angle is, that's your angle of attack. And typically on the G-strings, and they're so efficient, we'll only run like maybe 1 or 2 degrees. And on other cars, like the 3D wings we use, their level of efficiency is high, so I actually run them almost flat. But here's the thing in tuning for a wing. I mean, you want to keep start just like shocks. I always start soft on shocks and work my way up. Well, on a wing, you always want to start low, like at 0 or 1 degree, and see how the car works. I mean, you should notice the biggest difference with a wing is under braking. The back of the car wants to suck down, and you can keep adding wing, just keep adding a little bit of time. And if the car keeps going faster, that's great. As soon as you get to a point where all of a sudden your top end speed at the end of the straightaway is down like 5 or 10 miles an hour, then you went too far on the wing, just back it off a little bit. So it's just a matter of, without a wind tunnel, I mean, you need to be your own aerodynamic engineer, and you can tell if the car feels faster, but it is slower at the end of the straightaway, then take some wing out. You need to kind of get that balance between grip and drag.
Hey, this is real quick question because I want to get to some other ones. There's a conversation going on whether the Tiger hood will be made in a vented aluminum, or how do you feel about vented aluminum hoods?
But fine. I mean, if it's strong, it doesn't make any difference. And the carbon hood would be lighter than an aluminum hood, because I mean the Mustang hoods are light are aluminum and they weigh a ton. But yeah, I mean any kind of vented hood is okay.
Okay, Kobe Ward has a question. He's been on here like almost every week. Hello, Kobe. I think you're from California too, so you get up early. Kobe says, do you offer a strut tower brace for an S197 that would clear the taller Ford racing intake manifold? And he has a 2007.
I'll let you know.
So Brad said we'll follow up.
Yeah, because that's what we're putting on Cliff's car is the 3-valve intake manifold, along with some cool heads, cams. I mean, it's a really nice package, and I decided there's some aftermarket stuff that, you know, better cams and all that stuff. I decided to stick with pure Ford racing, just like they spec'd for the 2011 World Challenge. And that's next week's subject. Okay,
and Cliff Lynn just mentions this on Aero catch pins. He says he buys a couple spare pins. They're cheap aluminum and will crack in half without a spare. You're not running the rest of the day.
Okay, there you go.
Very good point.
I mean, there's nothing better than experience. And that's somebody sharing their experience, just like I share my experience.
Okay, and then I'm looking, I need to sing or something. Oh, Kobe has another question. Will the Apex 11-inch wheels fit on the front of an S197?
I think the answer is yes, but that's the question that we need to go to Rich, because he handles those. So I would suggest you call in and talk to Rich, and he could probably answer that question for you. I think the answer is yes, but I don't want to say for sure because I really don't know for sure. Okay, and Brad answered Kobe's question on the strut tower brace, I believe. Does not look like it will fit, Kobe. Also, that intake is really for a boosted application, should be used with upgraded cylinder heads and cams, the flow best if you're seeing naturally aspirated. Let's see. I think that may be it. If you have a question that I did not answer, Kenny did not answer, send it in now. Last call for questions. This is it.
It's after. You've gone more than an hour. So.
Yeah, I thought I was going to go more than an hour. I had actually, because I had so much to do, a little quicker. So if you have any questions, add them to the Speed Therapy Society group, and Kenny will answer them next week. Yeah, that's a good point. That, you know, any additional questions, just put them into Speed Therapy Society group on Facebook, and then that's where I get the questions. Is kind of how I develop the content, what I'm going to talk about. Like I said before, I talk about what you want to learn about, and in the Speed Therapy Academy is different. I talk about what I want you to learn about. So take into consideration what you think they need to learn. Okay, yeah, it's cool. Couple little comments. Next week, Kenny's talking about building power in a 4.6 liter 3-valve engine. Yeah, I think you mentioned that already. We are changing up our newsletter format a little bit. We're going to be sending out one newsletter a week with content rich with a lot of information, and also the friendly reminder for the Cars and Coffee. And we're not going to send out as many reminding of the Cars and Coffee. So you just think it was getting too much, but we want you to remember. So if you've been here, remember to visit Cars and Coffee at 10 a.m. every Saturday morning. Or also, don't forget, if you've got a more technical question, then it's easy for me to answer. Schedule a 15-minute consult. I do complimentary consults. Volunteer my time for you, and I'll go through whatever questions you are. And like everybody knows, if I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you that too. But I know a lot of answers. So yeah, schedule a 15-minute. And I don't think I have very few that actually last 15 minutes. Yeah. But I mean, I try to be sure I give you enough information back. It's good to answer tech questions if you want help laying out a build plan for your car. That's the other thing too. If you don't know what to do, but you want to do some stuff, don't know what to do, set up a 15-minute. We'll talk through your goals, objectives, your budget, and I'll come up with a plan for you that you can just, if you do it in stage all at once, we do it in stages. I mean, we have a lot of people that do it in stages, and if you do it the right way, you don't have to go back and redo something. So that's kind of important.
So again, if you're not on our newsletter, make sure you sign up. It's on our Kenny Brown, on the bottom of our website, kennybrown.com, and also on any of the Facebook pages, the Kenny Brown Facebook pages. So with that.
Okay, with that, we are going to wrap up today. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Be sure to share it. And remember, you can always see this will be on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go back and see it again, just, go to Kenny Brown, YouTube, Kenny Brown TV, and you'll find it there along with the other 37 episodes.
And if you like what Kenny's sharing, give us some thumbs up.
Some thumbs up. And of course, don't forget those little heart things. I guess that's just on Facebook. Can you do that on YouTube too?
I don't think so, no.
Can you do like on YouTube?
I think so, yeah.
If you're on YouTube, you do some likes. And we like likes. Like that.
Okay, great.
So with that, we're going to wrap up today. I hope you learned something. And next week is going to be also a really cool session. We're going to talk about top end power on a 463 valve. And power comes from the top end. Durability comes from the bottom end. The only caveat to that is if you add like stroke or increase the size, that'll add torque. So if power comes from the top end, you can lose power on the bottom, but you really can't make power on the bottom, except for torque.
Hi, Annabis. I see you just showed up. All right, you've probably been there, but he's another good customer. A lot of our customers are in here, so okay.
Okay, okie dokie. And then as we go through the Daytona Prototype engine build, we'll probably give you some updates on that too. We just now got parts ordered, so that'll be in a little bit, and we're going to get this thing back together so Roy can just tear up the track again. So okay, well, listen, I really thank you for joining me today, joining us, me and my producer. Sounds kind of odd. But anyway, thanks for showing up. I hope you learned something, and certainly tell your friends and share. We could use those thumbs up, and we could use the sharing. It helps the algorithms spread the word a little bit. So with that, we'll see you next week. I'm sure you're going to be sitting on the edge of your chairs just waiting for next week's episode. So we'll see you then.